Welcome back to another live question period with myself. Thank you for joining. Hope we have some lively, insightful, and witty analysis of question period. We're down to what, 3 days now of question period left. Well, actually, yes, including today. They're all out of here on Friday. We won't see them for 3 months. I can guarantee you that. Good day. Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Got some great video to show you. We just wanted to make a few comments before I do that. Did you notice yesterday, every time Chrystia Freeland talked about plumbers, electricians, welders, etc., she said that they live paycheck to paycheck. She thinks they're making minimum wage. She thinks these people aren't capable of saving any money, aren't capable of investing in properties, and that there's somehow some sort of permanent subclass. And they can never imagine having a capital gains worth 250,000 or above. That's only for the very wealthy. She is so confused. She's so out of touch. She's so ignorant. Let's say it. She is so goddamn stupid at times. She's completely out of touch with Canadians. One of the people online yesterday commented while she was saying this that he is in that category of electricians, plumbers, and welders, and he's making $200,000 a year. That's more than a lot of white collar workers. Now, I would say that would put them in the very wealthy class, according to Justin Trudeau. But this is all about protecting people like Justin Trudeau and protecting the very wealthy from taxes. They put their taxes in tax shelters. It's ordinary Canadians who invest in properties, who buy businesses or sell businesses, they're the ones who are being hit hard by this capital gains tax of 66.7%. 2/3 of income gained from a capital gains sale goes to the government. And you're being taxed twice. You've already been taxed on this income. You're using your income to invest in property or business, which you hope someday to sell, yes, for a profit, because it's your bloody pension fund. But these liberals are too stupid, or they're obfuscating deliberately because they want people to stay in economic slavery in this country. Anyway, I'll have more to say about that later. I want to show you these fantastic clips that we put together. Justin Trudeau is stunned that he would be asked these questions. Absolutely stunned.
To just go on without names attached to some of these allegations. I mean, Jagmeet Singh has said that there's nobody in his caucus he needs to worry about. Can you say the same thing with comfort and clarity?
I hadn't known that Jagmeet said that. I would be wary of any party leader drawing any sort of conclusion like that.
Including Mr. Singh?
I would be wary of any party leader drawing any conclusion like that. There is a range of issues around foreign interference that our security agencies, that our various institutions are engaged in. We know that foreign actors are trying to interfere in all different parties in many different ways, and protecting the integrity of our parliamentary system and of people who choose to step forward in Parliament from false or misleading accusations that may well be the goal of some of those countries wishing to interfere, is requiring a level of thoughtfulness that is not always conducive to selling newspapers or headlines, but is what a responsible government must do to continue to engage in foreign interference. And I'll remind you, we are the government that has brought in more measures, more structures, more ways to deal with foreign interference than any other, because no other government ever did anything on that.
Yes. And of course, you are the government. So China and any other foreign actors are probably going after government MPs, right, Justin Trudeau? You won't admit that. You won't say that. You've seen the report. Are you on the list? Is Disco Steve Guilbeault on the list? He's one of the chairmen. He's one of the chief participants of a Chinese environmental group. He flies to Beijing every September to hobnob with his communist buddies, his communist comrades. Is Stephen Guilbeault on the list, Justin Trudeau?
A lot of people will look at those last two answers and suggest that you are implying there's something to be suspicious about with the New Democrats, right, and their caucus. And this is the whole challenge with this issue, right?
I am implying that interference in our parliamentarians goes beyond party lines from many different sources, and we need...
We're concerned, and I know you don't direct the police on this, but have you gotten any sense of whether things have improved in the past little while?
There is work ongoing very much.
I want to switch, if I can, to the tax issue that your government has been pushing, the change in the capital gains inclusion rate, and you've argued that it will really only affect the truly wealthy. I think it's fair to say that one sector, though, that will be particularly affected by this is the tech sector because of the way they compensate their staff and build their companies. You said you want Canada to be a tech hub, particularly in artificial intelligence. Given the way tech companies function in their employees, does this not work against your economic goals there?
No, it doesn't, because at the same time we're creating more incentives and more supports for startups and tech companies to continue to do the groundbreaking advances in artificial intelligence, quantum robotics, all the different things that Canada is one of the world leaders on. The choice we made to ask those who are
He's lying through his teeth. People are leaving Canada in droves, and capital is not coming to Canada because it's a poor risk.
Making a lot of money. With the capital gains affects individuals when they're making more than $250,000 in a given year from the sale of investments that they've made. That
apples and oranges. Capital gains tax is not an income tax like the normal income tax. It's a second income tax. So these people are paying income tax on the money they earn, and they're paying a second income tax. They're being taxed twice on money they've invested. That is what is so stupid about the capital gains tax going up to 66.7%. It's theft. Outright theft.
That is not the vast majority of Canadians. And what we're doing with that money is putting it towards making sure specifically that young people who are seeing the dreams of home ownership or prices rise on groceries and on so many different things, we're able to actually invest more to support them, because the system is not getting more fair, and we're trying to make sure that it's fair for every generation.
But if a tech company that wants to get into artificial intelligence is starting from the ground up, these are not existing companies really at scale in our economy at this point in time, they will go where the tax opportunities are more favorable, will they not? Do you not create a disincentive for them to come to Canada based on this new structure?
If someone's only going on where they can make the most profits in the world, they'll go to a zero tax location somewhere on an island somewhere. But if they want to actually build a company that has a world-class talent pool to draw from, a place that offers extraordinary supports and competitive opportunities and quality of life for everyone, for all their workers and their executives, they come to Canada. And that's what we've seen over the past years as more and more companies are investing in Canada. Last year, we were the third largest country in the world in terms of total foreign direct investment, because companies, including in the tech sector, are choosing to come and invest in Canada. And this making sure that young people have a fairer chance is not going to dissuade people. On the contrary, it's the kind of thing that makes for more stable and fairer societies that people want to be part of.
Despite that optimistic picture, I mean, the country is still angry. You can see it in the mood. And increasingly, Prime Minister, a lot of them are mad at you, right? I know you say you want to beat Pierre Poilievre. You keep coming back to that. But what if you are the reason the Liberals can't beat the Conservatives in the next election? Where do you factor that into your thought?
It's absolutely true. Thought
process.
Well, I think, first of all, Canadians are not in a decision mode right now. What you tell a pollster, if they ever manage to reach you, is very different from the choice Canadians end up making in an election campaign. And fundamentally, and it's not just Canada, but everywhere around the world, and indeed I was talking with other leaders at the G7 and in Switzerland at the Peace Conference for Ukraine, everywhere people are struggling with high inflation, with cost of living issues, with interest rates, with housing challenges, with childcare challenges, all these things, we are doing better than many countries. Doesn't make a difference to someone who can't pay for their groceries, but the way people are everywhere facing a certain amount of frustration. And I truly believe that as we choose to step up on solving those challenges, to contrast with a political vision that so far consists from the Conservatives of just making people more angry and saying everything is broken.
Well, what do y'all think of that? The guy is lying through his teeth. We're doing a lot better than a lot of other countries. Which ones? Third world countries, maybe? We're at the bottom of the G7. We're near the bottom of the G20, actually. It's absolute rubbish to suggest Canada is doing just fine. Thank you very much. We are in a catastrophe. This is an economic catastrophe. We're nearing the edge of the fiscal cliff. And for Chrystia Freeland to blather on about welders, plumbers, everybody else living from paycheck to paycheck, just as an ignorant woman who knows nothing about economics, who knows nothing about finances, and her prime minister is just as stupid and is just as out of touch, just as detached, just as ignorant, just as unable to delineate fiction from fantasy, from nonfiction, from reality from fantasy. We're going to be going to question period here any minute, but I wanted to get that point across before we did. The capital gains tax is nothing short of theft, and that's all it is. I think we're just about ready for question period. Anyway, thanks for watching this portion of the broadcast, and we will be discussing this further. But do you think Justin Trudeau is one of the people in that paper? You know damn well, since they followed the Bloc's advice, the Liberal government followed the Bloc's advice and shunted this paper, this document, this report from this multi-partisan group of parliamentarians. You know they sent it up to the Hogue Commission. It's going to be buried there. You're never going to hear another word about this, especially since the House is recessing on Friday. Just watch. This report will be buried because it is explosive and it's damaging to Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party and his Liberal government. We need to continue to press for the release of this report, and the Conservatives need to keep talking about it. Yes, the capital gains tax issue is important, but we also need to know who these MPs are, and we need to know it now, not in September when these MPs return. Let's watch question period now. Thank you.
Oral questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, this parliamentary session, we once again saw that everything in Canada is broken. Housing costs have doubled. Millions of Canadians are going to food banks. 25% of Canadians, a record level, are living in poverty after 9 years of this Liberal Prime Minister, with the support of the Bloc Québécois. Is this Prime Minister going to force Canadians to suffer for another 18 months of this hell? Or will he call elections right now so that Canadians can elect a government that will cut taxes, build housing, fix the budget, and stop the crime? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if the leader of the Conservative Party really cared about the affordability crisis, he would support our dental care plan for seniors and youth. He would be helping us to support 400,000 children a year so that they can access school food programs. He would be supporting our measures to make more childcare spots available. He would be supporting our ambitious plan to increase housing and densification. But instead, he's playing petty partisan games instead of delivering for Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, we've already seen what these policies are like for 9 years. They are causing the poverty and problems that I talked about earlier. And now he wants to force Quebec to shut down the forestry sector. We learned from the Quebec Natural Resources Ministry that this may kill up to 30,000 jobs, but the Bloc Québécois doesn't have a single word to say against it. Will this Prime Minister put an end to this radical decree so that we can save the jobs of 30,000 Quebec workers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, unlike the leader of the Conservative Party, Quebecers know very well that the only way to build a stronger future is by protecting both the economy and the environment at the same time. That is how we will create a more prosperous future for Quebecers and all Canadians. But once again, we see that the Conservative Party has an anti-environmental approach. We will continue to work with the government of Quebec. We will continue to work hard to protect forestry jobs and to protect caribou. That is what people expect from a responsible government.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What this session of Parliament taught us is that after 9 years of this Prime Minister, everything is broken. 25% of Canadians are now living in poverty. 2 million lined up at food banks. 38% more people are homeless. Housing costs have doubled. It wasn't like this before this Prime Minister, and it won't be like this after he's gone. Will he put us through another year and a half of this costly hell, or will he call a carbon tax election today so we can elect a common sense government to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition actually cared more about Canadians than he does about his own political interests, he'd be supporting the 400,000 kids we're going to help with the National School Food Program. He'd be voting in favor, instead of opposing at every turn, the dental care program that has already helped over 200,000 seniors and will now, as of next week, start helping young people and Canadians with disabilities. He'd be standing with us on expanding childcare spaces instead of campaigning against it. But Mr. Speaker, he doesn't care about Canadians. He cares only about himself.
Yes, here must
The
read
Honourable
the
Leader of the
report.
Opposition.
Speaker, these are the same promises that he's been making for 9 years. And instead of the theoretical utopia that he's promised, what Canadians are living through is hell, with tent cities popping up across the country in places they never existed before, with 2 million people lined up in food banks, 1 in 10 Torontonians included in that number, in a town where right now it is impossible for almost anyone to afford a home, and there are 256 tent cities. Why won't he recognize that these are the very real consequence of his policy of wackonomics?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as part of our plan to invest the most ambitious housing plan this country has ever seen, to invest in supports for seniors, supports for young people, supports for Canadians with disabilities, the Conservative leader is choosing to demonstrate what everyone knows Conservative parties do, which is protect the wealthiest and let everyone else fend for themselves. While we are asking the wealthiest Canadians to pay a little bit more by raising the capital gains inclusion rate for anyone making over $250,000 in a given year on selling properties, he's standing with the wealthiest, not with the middle class and people working hard to join him.
Who the hell do you stand with, Trudeau? You are one of the
Honourable Leader
wealthiest
of the
with your money
Opposition.
in tax shelters.
Speaker, the middle class doesn't exist after 9 years of this Prime Minister. Here are the facts. 76% of young people believe they'll never afford a home. 38% more homeless people. 256 homeless encampments in Toronto alone. 2 million people lined up at a food bank. 1 in 4 Canadians skipping meals because they can't afford the price of food. Is this what he meant when he said sunny ways for the middle class?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've seen throughout this session and indeed throughout his career, covering more than 19 years as a parliamentarian, that the leader of the Conservative Party is very quick to use sound bites that use Canadians, that exacerbate and exaggerate and indeed amplify the real concerns people are facing, but he is nowhere on solutions for them. He's standing against dental care, against pharmacare, against investments in the middle class and people working hard to join it, against investments to create jobs and a future for Canadians, because all he cares about is himself and his future.
This is called distraction and detraction, because Justin Trudeau's the one who cares only about himself,
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker,
as you all know,
in
and as is
Quebec,
clearly evident.
according to Canada Post, you don't actually need to speak French to
Oh,
deliver
and I
a
don't
mail or to
believe
sort
it.
it.
Blockhead
They say
Blanchett
that
is bringing this up again
mail
about
delivery
letter
people don't
carriers
talk
not
to
speaking
anyone.
enough French.
Apparently, they don't chat with their colleagues at
This
work.
guy's
Apparently,
this
they
guy's
don't
head
chat
is
with
where his
people they're
ass is.
delivering mail
It's just
to.
amazing how
Will
he
the
can come
Prime
up with his
Minister
blather.
ask Canada Post to insist that its
And
employees
this
in
is the
Quebec
guy who
actually
says,
speak French?
"Oh, there's going
The
to be
Right
dire
Honourable Prime
consequences
Minister.
for my blockhead
Mr.
MPs
Speaker,
if they're part of
our
this
government has
flying network."
always been
But
there
he's
to
not going to
defend
say what he's
official
going to do
languages in
about it.
Canada.
And besides, the bloc is already a
And in
treasonous
fact,
bunch of bastards.
we were the first
Every bloc
federal government
MP
to recognize
is
that we have a specific
engaged in
responsibility to
treasonous
protect
activity
French, including in Quebec.
because
And
they're
that's why we will
separatists.
continue to ensure that the
By
Official
the
Languages Act
very
is respected
definition,
throughout the country,
they shouldn't be providing advice
including
to
in
any
federal
Canadian,
institutions like Canada
anybody in
Post.
Canada, about what to
We
do
will
about a
follow up on
foreign
this issue because it
influence
is
or
important to
foreign
ensure that we're always
actor
standing up
scandal,
for our two
about
official
foreign
languages
interference,
everywhere in Canada.
because their allegiance is to a foreign
The
power
honourable
that
member
doesn't
for
even
Belleuil-Chambly.
exist, namely an independent
Well,
Quebec.
Mr. Speaker,
These blockheads are so
this
incredibly
Liberal
inept
government
and
says
so
one thing
stupid,
in
and
public
had
about
such
French.
gall to even stand up in the House of Commons
In
and
fact,
dispense
the
advice.
type of announcements this government likes to make about French
And here
remind
they
me
go on
more
about
of
their bloody
Molière than
language
Shakespeare.
obsession again.
They're not serious because ultimately, in reality, this Liberal government is seeing
This
French
guy is an
decline
atrocity.
everywhere, and it
This
invests in
Blanchett
English and
is an
supporting
atrocity.
English.
He wants to
Does this Prime
eliminate
Minister recognize that his
the
policies
religious
are actually
exemption
harming
for
French?
so-called hate
The
speech.
Right
So
Honourable
if you
Prime
quote
Minister.
from the Bible, the Quran,
Mr. Speaker,
any religious
I
text,
understand that
they
all
can
the
throw
Bloc
you in
Québécois
prison for
wants
hate speech because
is to
this
pick
idiot
fights
blockhead
about
says that's what we should do.
identitarian matters. They only care about that, but actually, no government before us has done more to support official languages throughout the country, including protecting
I
French
mean,
in
the
Quebec.
blockheads have it both ways, don't they? They've got a
We will
unilingual
always be
Quebec
there to
and a
support official
bilingual
languages.
Canada, and
We
yet
will
they
always
pretend
be
they
there
have
to
such
support official
grievances.
language
They
minority
agree with Justin
communities.
Trudeau on everything. It's all of his woke
I know very
ideology,
well that the
all
Bloc
of his
Québécois doesn't
extremism,
care at all
environmental
about
policies, all of his
Francophone communities
socialist
outside
fiscal
Quebec, but
policies.
we will be there for
What's
official
their
languages
grievance? What's the
throughout the
problem?
country.
I would say Alberta should have a grievance. They're the ones paying
The
for the rest
honourable
of
member
Canada
from Burnaby
through
South.
In this
their
last week of Parliament, the Prime Minister showed us
provincial
whose side he's really on. At a
giveaways.
time when 1 out of 4
Well, let's see
Canadians
what
are living
Jugmeat
in
has to
poverty,
say.
the out-of-touch Liberals voted against stronger penalties for corporations that are ripping off Canadians, against banning mergers that hurt people. Why is this Prime Minister letting corporations rip off Canadians when 1 out of 4 are living in poverty?
Well, at least he
The Right
agrees with
Honourable
1
Prime
out of
Minister.
4
Mr.
living in
Speaker,
poverty.
as a government, we've been focused from day one on helping young Canadians succeed. That's why on day one, we raised taxes on the wealthiest 1% and lowered them for the middle class, which the NDP at the time voted against. We've continued to step up on asking the wealthiest to pay a little more in this most recent budget by raising the capital gains inclusion tax, so the people making $250,000 or more on capital gains share a little more of those profits with Canadians
A
who
little
actually
more.
need it.
From 50 to
Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, once again,
67%, that's
the
a little more,
Conservatives
is
have
it,
aligned
moron?
themselves with the wealthiest in this country and are not there for people who need it.
Does this guy understand English? Do we have to write it in French for him?
Burnaby South.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Big corporations continue to rip off Canadians. 25% des gens
25% of Canadians are living at a poverty level. 25%. And this Prime Minister won't even support these 3 words, lowering prices for Canadians, in my bill. I know that this Prime Minister hasn't actually experienced the challenges that people are going through, but how can he be this oblivious?
No,
The right
250,000 is
Honourable Prime
not
Minister.
rich, Linda.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that Canadians are experiencing affordability challenges. And that is why we are delivering programs and investments that help people, whether it be $10 a day childcare,
Oh, Tom,
whether it be dental care,
Jugmeat is a complete
whether
hypocrite.
it be
And he's
support
in this
for
game
insulin or
for a
reproductive health,
pension
whether it be a code of
and
conduct
for
for big
whatever
grocery chains
power
to
he can
protect
accumulate.
consumers,
But he's a
whether it
walking,
be
talking
for
clown,
400,000
just like
children
his
who will have
master,
better
Justin Trudeau.
school food programs. Thanks to our national program, we will continue to be there to support Canadians and to ensure that those who are better off pay their fair share.
A vote in Parliament in favor of banning the IRGC wasn't enough to convince the Prime Minister to list it as a terrorist organization 6 years ago. The organization killing 55 Canadians in an unprovoked attack on a passenger aircraft wasn't enough to make him do it. Even its role in the October 7th attack and its subsequent role in inciting hatred on our streets was not enough. By-election for the Prime Minister to change his mind. Why is the Prime Minister always putting his political security above national security?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, today we've listed the IRGC as a terrorist entity. This sends a strong message that Canada will use
He's
all
probably
tools
is right. That's the only reason he did the by-election.
There can be no impunity.
And applaud the great hero. Give a standing ovation to this great man.
Another of the extremely strong measures we've taken against the Iranian regime, some of the strongest measures in the world.
In the world. Yes, Justin.
The Honourable Leader of
Sit
the
your butt
Opposition.
down
Minister
because
is
you got
also
nothing to
forced to
say.
release data from his own government showing that there would be a $30 billion a year hit to our economy as a result of his job-killing carbon tax. Data that he had up until then been hiding. He's been going around claiming that Canadians are better off because they pay this tax. Did the calculations that went into his 8 out of 10 talking points include this $30 billion a year cost to the Canadian economy and to Canadian families?
Excellent point.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed that 8 out of 10 Canadians in jurisdictions that have the federal carbon price in them get more money back from the Canada carbon rebate than they pay with this price on pollution. That is fact. Now, the Conservative leader has been using erroneous figures that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said he made a mistake on to continue to attack our plan on fighting climate change and putting more money back in people's pockets. 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off, Mr. Speaker.
He's repeating a lot. And you can tell when he's lying because he stutters and
Does that
stammers.
include the $30 billion a year economic cost when distributed among those 8 out of 10 families?
Don't confuse Trudeau. He doesn't understand what that
Mr.
means.
Speaker, once again, the Conservatives are basing their attacks on climate action and affordability on erroneous calculations that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has admitted that he made. The fact that the Parliamentary Budget Officer also calculated without making any mistakes that 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off with the Canada carbon rebate and the price on pollution means that we are not only fighting climate change and bringing down emissions, we're also putting more money back in the pockets of Canadians who need support
What a
right
fraud.
now. Money that
What
the
a
Conservative
fraudster
Party
you
wants
are.
to take away.
Lying fraud. You know you're lying. 8 out of 10.
The
Read
Honourable
your
Leader of the
script.
Opposition.
I'm not using Parliamentary Budget Officer numbers. I'm using numbers that this Liberal government has now published. This government has admitted that their carbon tax will hit Canadians with $30 billion in annual losses to wages and higher prices. That is their data. They published it. So once again, very specific question. When he claims that 8 out of 10 are better off, does that include the $30 billion of costs that he now admits that the government will impose on the economy.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know how much clearer I can be, but I'll try. Based on everything this government knows, all the studies we've made, all the studies that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has made, we can affirm very clearly, and it's backed up by independent economists, that 8 out of 10 families in jurisdictions across the country where the federal price on pollution applies do better off with more money in their pockets than the price on pollution costs them with the Canada carbon rebate. It's putting more money in the pockets of Canadians, and the Conservatives are wrong on this.
He knows he's wrong. He knows he's lying. Stand up to the clown. Go ahead. It means nothing. They'll all be gone in a year and a half.
Leader of the Opposition.
You can't say yes, because he knows that when you take the $30 billion a year and divide it by the 17 million Canadian families, then you come up with almost $2,000 per Canadian family based on numbers published by his own government. So it's like him saying, you can afford this house as long as you don't take into consideration the down payment and the monthly mortgage payments. If you take out $30 billion of costs, you don't have a real calculation. So why doesn't he put the $30 billion back into the calculator and show Canadians whether they're really better off?
I think he's got the bastard.
It is actually quite stunning to see the leader lay it out so clearly that all of his math depends on one factor that he believes, which is climate change isn't real, according to the leader of the opposition.
Oh,
That's the
diffuse
only
the
way to make sure his
situation.
math works. If he says there are no costs to Canadians of extreme weather events, there are no costs to Canadians about degrading competition when the world is switching towards greener solutions. If you don't believe in climate change, then his math works. But if you know that climate change is a real threat to Canadians and the economy, then we need to act, and that's what we're doing.
Well, if you want to make up your facts around your made-up climate change, then that's the only way you win the argument. Eh, bozo? Yeah. What a clown.
The Honourable
He's not fit
Leader
for the
of the
circus.
Opposition.
No, all you have to accept is the fact that his carbon tax will not reduce by 1 penny the cost of climate change to Canadians. It will not eliminate one flood, one drought, one storm, one anything. This carbon tax literally does nothing to change the weather or the climate. What it does is makes Canadians poorer. So will he finally admit that all along he's been misleading Canadians, that he knew he had the data that Canadians pay more and get less and get screwed over by the carbon tax?
Encourage all members to try to find ways that for polite words.
Curtis, shut up and sit down.
The Honourable Leader, the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, the only way the Conservative leader's math makes sense is when he believes that climate change has no cost for Canadians. Canadians right across this country are seeing the impact of climate events, the impact of the need to innovate and create greener, cleaner jobs for the future as we deliver our resources to the world. The fact that he doesn't believe in climate change means that he doesn't believe the climate action that puts more money in people's pockets is worth it. Well, that's exactly where we disagree, and we're going to continue to help Canadians get through this.
How can you take this man seriously? You just continue to harp on the same illogical line. I'll bring the blockhead back.
Now we have Bill 96 on French in Quebec.
I don't want to
but
hear the
American
bastard
businesses are
talk about
pressuring
French
Joe
in
Biden.
Quebec anymore. You know, this is incredible exchange. Because Trudeau admitted that we're not better off. You have to factor in this illusionary climate change cost. We have to take his word for it, that somehow climate change is responsible for all of these fires, all of these floods, all of these natural calamities that are creating problems. That any environmental event is a result of climate change. So therefore, click, there we go. Ching, ching, ching. The price tag keeps going up, and it's all because of climate change. This man thinks you're stupid enough to buy into this argument. He knows it's a scam. He knows he's getting away with fiscal murder by doing this. But he doesn't care because it's all about Justin Trudeau staying in power, clinging to power. This narcissistic individual who thinks he has the right, who thinks he's entitled to be your prime minister. He's not even entitled to be a bad drama coach, which is all he ever was. All right, I'll put the blockhead back on.
We know that unilingual public servants are being hired in Quebec. We know that there have been a number of other issues that undermine the French language in Quebec. There has been funding, in fact, to undermine Bill 96 right up to the Supreme Court. Does the Prime Minister understand that for Francophones elsewhere in Canada and North America, who we may be the only allies for, do they understand that this is the only way to preserve their future, and it's doing the opposite?
Any
The
legislature
Right
in the
Honourable Prime
world
Minister
would have a bunch of fools
Mr.
like
Speaker,
this
I know that the
occupying
leader of the Bloc
seats,
Québécois is always trying to pick
obsessing about
fights.
language day in,
And
day
I
out,
would remind him that we have
wasting
more Quebecers in our
hundreds of
Liberal
thousands of
caucus
hours
than he
of
has
time
in
in the House of
his
Commons and
caucus.
committee, obsessing
We will
about French
always
language.
defend French,
Never enough French
both
language
in Quebec and
anywhere,
elsewhere in
although they
Canada.
want to
We will be
separate
there.
from
We will
Canada.
invest
They think
hundreds
there
of
should be more
thousands.
French language
We will
everywhere in Canada.
invest hundreds of
Even
millions
though
of
they've got
dollars
their cake and
in the
ate it
French
too.
language. We
They've
will
got
offer French language for
bilingual,
immigrants. We will continue to defend
a
French throughout the
bilingual
country.
Canada. They've got a
And we will pay particular
unilingual
attention to
Quebec,
Quebec
but
because we
it's
know
never
that
going to
Quebec
be enough for these
must
people
remain a
because
place
it's all
with the French
about
language
more government
being in the
handouts.
first place, and we will always support it.
La semaine dernière, le Bloc.
Last week, the Bloc Québécois voted to increase taxes for Quebec farmers, all that during a cost of food crisis, and to increase costs for housing developers during a housing crisis, to increase taxes on doctors while we're experiencing a shortage of doctors, and to increase taxes on Quebec SMEs, all that during an economic crisis. Why is this Liberal Bloc always trying to take away Quebec money to instead fund the colossal central and centralizing Liberal government, the Right Honourable Prime Minister? Mr. Speaker, I don't think I really followed the question. But
I'm sure you didn't follow the question.
The Bloc Québécois is a party that tries to pick fights with the federal government, but even so, the Bloc recognizes that the Conservative Party is passionate about defending the ultra-wealthy and that they're not trying to help people who actually need help. And that's not a good thing for the country, no matter what your political allegiance. The fact that the Conservatives keep trying to undermine initiatives that would get the most wealthy among us to pay their fair share to help youth, seniors, and so on, that's really shocking. And I'm glad that the Bloc Québécois is aligned with us on this.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition. You're in cahoots with the Bloc.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois is always aligned with the Liberals to keep them in power. We know that this is basically the Liberal Bloc. We learned today from Angus Reid that 1 out of 5 Canadians earning between $50,000 and $100,000 a year, 1 in 5 believe that they will be affected by this Bloc Liberal increase in taxes. But if the Prime Minister wants to deny that, well, there's a very clear way to settle this. Will the Liberal government support an amendment to exclude everyone who possesses less than 1% of the wealth in Canada from the tax increase? Will the government do this, yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, everyone in this House knows very well that there are issues where I disagree with the leader of the Bloc Québécois. We've heard about that many, many times. But sometimes we do see eye to eye. And then we stand up against the Conservative Party because they are always supporting the wealthiest Canadians. They always want to protect the wealthiest people and do that instead of investing in housing, instead of helping seniors, instead of creating more childcare spaces. We know that we must stand up for the middle class and those who are working hard to join it.
Jackass who came down so hot
meanwhile,
and heavy
the Conservatives
on
just want to
truckers
protect their ultra-wealthy buddies. That's not how we're going to get a
protested
better
your
economy
COVID
for everyone.
mandates. Is that
Rich
helping
friends,
the working
people who
people?
make between $50,000 and $100,000 a year, are too rich for him. I guess he wants to make them poor. He's succeeding at that. Yep. 1 in 5 Canadians told Angus Reid that they will be affected, including 1 in 5 of people making between $50,000 and $100,000 a year, Mr. Speaker. Another tax targeting the middle class by this promise-breaking Prime Minister. If those Canadians are wrong and they won't be affected, will the Prime Minister announce that he will amend his tax increase law to exclude anybody making less than $100,000 a year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our increase to the capital gains inclusion rate will affect people who make more than $250,000 in profits when they sell successful investments within a given year. We feel that those people can make a slight less amount of profits so that we can make sure we're investing in young people who can afford housing, so that we help seniors with the cost of dental care, so we deliver free insulin and free prescription contraceptives across this country.
Yes, all for those free birth control bills.
More so we can help those who need it. And the Conservatives are choosing to stand.
Yeah, so people should give 2/3 of their capital gains to you, so you can spend it on your free birth control. Yes.
Not my words. Those are the words of Scott Bryson, the former Liberal president of the Treasury Board, the very person to whom the Prime Minister trusted all of his spending. Add to that Bill Morneau and John Manley, 2 former finance ministers who have now said they are against this tax increase, and David Dodge, a Liberal former governor of the Bank of Canada. Now that all these Liberals say that the Prime Minister is up to socialist baffle-gab, will he reverse this job-killing tax on Canadians?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it should actually be no surprise to Canadians to see the Conservatives, after pretending to care about workers, after pretending to care about vulnerable people, revert to type and stand against and ask for the wealthiest to pay a little bit more in taxes so we can invest even more in Canadians who need it, whether it's through a national school food program, whether it's expanding places in child care, whether it's delivering dental care for seniors and Canadians with disabilities. These are all things the Conservatives stand against, just like they stand against asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share.
He has no idea, because he has been sheltered from reality for so long. Hypocrite, narcissistic, useless individual.
Mr. Speaker, the housing crisis is hurting seniors in Port Moody. The Liberals have promised to build more affordable housing, but yet they continue to sit on their hands and drag their feet. The closed Canada Post Office at 45 Mary Street is a good location for quality affordable homes for seniors. New affordable homes at this location has the support of the city and the community, but the Liberals have yet to put a shovel in the ground.
By the way, just a little interjection from me, folks. Thank you for your great comments today. I'm trying to keep up with them to get them on the screen. Please like this broadcast if you can, and subscribe. We've got to keep moving the subscriptions up. Some people are being unsubscribed. Please resubscribe if you have to. So please give us a like so we can beat the censorship. We're doing that today. We're overcoming YouTube's suppression. Thank you for helping me do that. And once again, we will be doing live broadcasts throughout the summer on subject matter. And I want your opinion on what we should do. I want your comments about what you think I should be doing throughout the summer when there's no question period, so we can continue the momentum. And we need to keep asking questions about these damn treasonous MPs, because we're not going to get any answers from the Liberal government, and I fear not from the official opposition either. And we're going to get nothing but obfuscation and distraction. All right, back to the clown show.
Want to see these polluting firms out of our waters. But where is the plan? The Liberals have spent years delaying on a real job strategy for all those impacted. Coastal communities cannot be left behind. Will the Prime Minister's decision include the delivery of necessary funds to support impacted First Nations and coastal communities?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, protecting our environment is one of the top priorities of this government and has been since we took office in 2015, as has reconciliation. And as we move forward on the right kinds of things to protect our environment, including protecting wild salmon, we are also going to be there to make sure that we are supporting Indigenous communities with economic opportunities and growth to continue to provide for their communities, to continue to be able to thrive in Canada's economy of the future.
The Honourable Member from Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, as we approach National Indigenous Peoples Day on June 21st, Indigenous and non-Indigenous people from across Canada will engage in meaningful celebrations. At the same time, we will
Don't you
undertake
hate
important
these
reflections
stupid
of our past
softball
and on the
questions?
path that we are on to secure
Thank you for
a
the
better
members'
future.
advocacy.
Manitoba is home
Thank
to
you for the
Canada's
members'
largest
hard work on
Indigenous
this issue.
population.
What a
Alongside
good
our
question
provincial
that was.
colleagues, we've been working hard to build bridges through new investments and partnerships,
Just
including
let
with Canada's
Native
first ever
people
First
be
Nations
like
Premier.
the rest
Can the
of
Prime Minister
Canadians.
offer this House his
Give them
reflections on the
freedom.
important progress that we have
Stop
made together
treating them
on our collective journey
like
towards
they're
truth
a
and
colony.
reconciliation? Thank you.
Stop keeping them in apartheid
The Right
conditions.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Let them be like
Speaker,
every
I
other
thank the member for
Canadian.
Winnipeg South Centre for his commitment to reconciliation. We will always be there for Indigenous people, and we'll keep working with them in full partnership. As a government, we created the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We appointed the first ever Indigenous Governor General and Indigenous Supreme Court Justice, and we created the Indigenous Languages Commission. We also recently passed legislation, C-29, to
identity
keep
politics.
future governments accountable on the path
Divide
of
one
reconciliation
Canadian from
to
another
work
on the
with
basis of
Indigenous
ethnicity
peoples.
and race.
We're all
That's all
excited to
Prime Minister
celebrate
does,
National
is
Indigenous
divide
Peoples Day
Canadians on the
with
basis of
Indigenous
ethnicity
communities
and
later
race.
this week.
I'm sick of hearing people described
The
ethnically or
Honourable Leader of the
racially
Opposition.
first.
So the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland says this Prime Minister's carbon tax will harm working class people just trying to heat their homes or drive to work. The former Liberal Finance Minister, which he appointed, says that this latest job-killing tax that he's brought in will drive investment out of the country. And the Liberal Treasury Board president that he appointed accuses the Prime Minister of socialist bafflegab. With Liberals accusing him of socialist bafflegab, will he just admit that he's actually not even a Liberal? He's Canada's first NDP Prime Minister.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have demonstrated over the past 9 years that investing in the middle class and people working hard to join it can create growth for the country. And that's why we're continuing to step up to put that growth for work by putting more money in the pockets of Canadians, whether it's through a plan to fight climate change that puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadian families across the country, whether it's by moving forward on asking the wealthiest who are selling off profitable investments to share a little more of those profits with Canadians who need it, by countering the housing crisis, by investing in young people. But once again, Conservatives stand with the wealthiest, we stand with the middle class.
The Honourable
Saying a
Leader of the
little
Opposition.
more.
Countering the housing crisis, he doubled housing costs, helping young people. 76% of them say they can't afford a home after 9 years of this Prime Minister. But it's getting worse. The Prime Minister gave $500 million to the Liberal NDP mayor and council at Toronto City Hall, supposedly to accelerate home building. What is the consequence? Since that money was handed over, Toronto City Hall has increased wait times and costs for building permits by 50%. Why does he keep forcing taxpayers to bloat the gatekeeping bureaucracies instead of doing what we want? Build the homes.
I know that we are coming to the end of the summer, end of the session, and members.
End of the
by
summer,
Friday,
Greg, huh?
and that members sometimes there might be a little bit more excited. I'm going to ask all members to please not take the floor unless they're recognized by the chair, because I can hear their voices pretty well. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the challenging fact that the Leader of the Opposition is trying to avoid is that just last week it was demonstrated that housing starts are up across this country. And that is part of where we have been investing with communities across the country in the Housing Accelerator Fund that is delivering more homes built faster. Indeed, we're going to see close to 4 million new homes in the coming decade because Canadians know that more density, better use of public lands, better protection for renters, better math for home builders to be able to build more affordable homes. These are the things that are going to make a difference in Canadians' lives.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Oh.
Better math? Well, I think we can all agree this Prime Minister needs better math. But here is the math. The Altus Group says that Canada's development charges are significantly higher, and our wait times for getting building permits are the second slowest in the entire OECD. And what is this Prime Minister doing? Giving $500 million to the City of Toronto, which has just increased its development charges and its permit wait times by 50%. So once again, why does the Prime Minister keep funding the gatekeepers instead of removing them so we can build the homes?
Again, I'm going to ask members, particularly the member from Hamilton Centre, if you could please not heckle people while they have the floor. Order.
Evans, no.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, here's a concrete example of how one makes the math work to build more homes. Last year, we made a decision to take off the GST on purpose-built middle-income apartment buildings, on the kind of apartment buildings we need more of right across the country. Within a few days after having announced that we would no longer be charging the GST on new apartment buildings, thousands of new units were being announced by developers across the country because suddenly they were able to bring projects onto the table that hadn't been on it before. That's how you invest in housing. That's how you deliver for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, permits take 3 times longer to get in Canada than in the US and in the UK. And in the last 2 years in Toronto, the wait time has gone from 21 months to 32 months, all while the Prime Minister has given that bureaucracy $500 billion to subsidize their building blocking bureaucracy. Why won't he follow my common sense plan to require municipalities permit 15% more housing completions as a condition of getting their federal funds?
Paul is dominating.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's be very clear. The Conservative leader has no plan to address the housing crisis. When he was housing minister under the Harper government, he had no plan to address the housing crisis. That government decided to get out of any federal engagement in housing, and we're seeing those consequences even 10 years later. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, that his plan to
blame the Harper government for your housing
GST
problem
on apartment building construction would slow down apartment building construction. His plan to withdraw funds that are needed for densification and permitting would slow down housing construction. That's not what Canadians need.
The master distraction. That's all this guy can do.
Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker,
Another
forest caribou is in danger of
Blanchett
extinction
blockheads up
with
for
the
the
help
third
from
time today.
the Conservatives, and that must not happen.
Not enough French with the posties.
Thousands of jobs linked to forestry, one of the greenest and most important resources in Quebec, are in danger of disappearing with the help of the Liberals. I accept neither. Does the Prime Minister agree to say that the issue of forest caribou is a test of our ability to reconcile resources and the environment? Does he agree that the solution should be negotiated between Quebec, the forestry industry, and Indigenous people?
I don't agree with anything as long as it keeps getting your support, blockhead.
Mr. Speaker, over the past 10 years, since before we were in power, the Government of Canada has worked hard to help the Government of Quebec present a plan to protect caribou and reach our common goals to protect the
Give me a
environment
break. It's
and
just all
protect jobs.
BS.
The federal government
Yes, we're
is
doing such
always
wonderful
open to
work.
collaborating with the government of Quebec and to support it while it puts in place measures to ensure the recovery of the species as part of a comprehensive strategy. We are ready to support local communities, jobs, and of course, the dynamic Quebec economy. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. If the government imposes orders, it will be an economic disaster for the forest. If Quebec doesn't have an agreement with industry, Indigenous people, unions, and more, forest caribou will be in more danger. Conservatives think they can solve this, but in a year and a half, things will be shut down, jobs will be gone. I don't know what the Prime Minister will say, Mr. Speaker, but I say that the Bloc Québécois and I will invest in looking for negotiated solutions agreed upon with the government of Quebec, the
The Bloc
only
Québécois should all
authority
go
on the
back to
forest.
Quebec and stop sitting in the House of
The Right
Commons
Honourable
because
Prime Minister.
you have no business
Mr. Speaker,
dispensing
we
any
agree
advice
to
about
work hand in hand
problems
in partnership with
experienced by
Quebec.
Canadians.
That is
You
exactly
don't
what we've
care.
done for years. It's been 10 years that different federal governments have been working to protect caribou and also to protect communities and jobs. We are there to work in partnership with Quebec. After so many years, we need
Trudeau
to
is
show
a communist dictator.
that we are a country with the rule of law, that we will
Not far
respect our
from it,
own laws
Doug, not far
on
from it.
protecting species at risk. That is what
We're
all
getting
Quebecers
closer.
and Canadians expect.
That's what he'd like to be.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
C'est quand même ironique de
It's ironic to see the Bloc look for a federal role in a field of provincial jurisdiction. The Bloc member this morning said that the federal government is able to meddle and kill forestry worker jobs. And if the Bloc hadn't voted to keep this Prime Minister in power, this order wouldn't have existed in the
We
first
are
place.
saying exactly what I did.
Mr.
Bloc
Speaker,
should shut up about federal politics.
Conservatives will cancel this order to protect jobs and to allow the government to protect nature and industry. That is common sense. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party shows day after day that they don't understand that the only way to build a healthy economy for Canadians for the years to come is to protect the environment as well. They refuse to accept any responsibility to protect the environment. And yes, other parties in this House and the vast majority of Canadians understand very well that we need to work to protect the environment and work to protect the economy. It's only the Conservatives who've made their choice to let down the environment and the future of Canadians. The Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, Quebec, the Quebec nation, is able to protect nature and jobs without interference from this Bloc, Liberal, incompetent government here in Ottawa. We believe that we can do both, but it's a decision for the government of Quebec on how to protect nature. 30,000 jobs are at play. Will the Prime Minister cancel the radical order by his Liberal minister? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. This so-called radical order is based on a bill put forward by the Prime Minister, who, according to experts, did the most to protect the environment in Canada, Brian Mulroney, a progressive Conservative. It's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, to see how much the Conservative Party is denying something that progressive Conservatives understood very well.
Yes, progressive conservative is an
a strong economy by
oxymoron.
protecting
It's
the
a
environment.
self-contradictory
Brian
term.
Mulroney showed that often during his career. The Conservatives have forgotten all of that, and they're attacking the planet and our future.
How nice for a weak fan of
The
Brian
Honourable Leader of
Mulroney.
the Opposition. Brian Mulroney knew that protecting the environment had nothing to do with increasing taxes and killing jobs, Mr. Speaker.
Liberal scandals. The RCMP commissioner just to confirm that there are now 6 active criminal investigations into contracts awarded by this NDP Liberal government. That's on top of the $60 million Arrive Scam Act, which saw $20 million go to 2 contractors who work out of their basement and don't even do IT work. Will the Prime Minister promise to personally cooperate with this criminal investigation so that Canadians can know where their money went?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this situation is obviously unacceptable, which is why authorities are looking into the procurement process. Anyone who took advantage of our COVID responses to save Canadian lives should face consequences. All federal contracts with these companies have been suspended as the investigations continue.
The honourable member
Smug,
for Ottawa
self-satisfied,
Vanier. Thank you,
useless
Mr.
Prime Minister.
Speaker. The pandemic and the war in Europe led to a crisis around the world. Our government has worked hard to fight inflation, and our plan is working. Canada has become the first G7 country to reduce its interest rates. As the Conservatives know how to do only one thing, cut. Can the Prime Minister share with us what our plan is to make life more affordable for Canadians?
Thank you for that lovely question and your
The
advocacy.
Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Ottawa Vanier for her question and for her hard work. Too many Canadians are struggling with the cost of living. That is why Canadians need a government who supports them. That is why we are investing in programs like dental care, pharmacare, daycare services, and the Canada Child Benefit that will be sent to millions of families tomorrow. At each stage, the Conservatives have tried to block us from supporting Canadians because despite their cheap slogans, they don't care about Canadians, just themselves. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Taking care of your friends, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister has literally doubled the amount spent on outside consultants, all the way up to $21 billion a year. That works out to $1,400 per family in taxes just to fund federal government consultants. One of them is $200 million to the Prime Minister's famous consulting firm, McKinsey. No wonder Canadians are forced to pay higher taxes. Will the Prime Minister finally put an end to this costly, self-licking ice cream cone and stop sending the bill to Canadians?
You're right. This is the longest Trudeau has paid inflation period in months.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker,
Somebody just
the only
pointed that out.
Canadians we're asking to pay a little more are those who've been very successful in these past years and are able to make more than $250,000 in profit from selling off investments. These are things that we think we can be asking of Canadians who've been successful to support Canadians who need a little more help, whether it's with the most ambitious housing plan this country's ever seen, whether it's dental care that's already delivered support
There you go. And this child food, yeah, free lunch for kids. That's all you can do is rhyme off these stupid little programs.
Continue to protect the wealthiest instead of supporting Canadians.
Let me sell my property and get back what I deserve.
That's a little bit rich coming from him as he raises taxes on single moms for the crime of driving to the grocery store, while he treats himself to a jet-setting experience where the food on the plane of a 6-day trip was $220,000. Beef brisket, parsley potatoes with truffle oil, beef tenderloin with port wine sauce, braised lamb shanks, and even cheesecake with pistachio brittle. Mr. Speaker, with Canadians lined up at the food bank, what's on the menu for this Prime Minister this summer?
Let them eat cake. That's exactly what Trudeau's about.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives continue to use cheap attacks and slogans when they stand against support directly for Canadians.
Keep the tax, eh?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister from the top, please.
Speaker, the Conservative leader continues to use cheap attacks and slogans while while he tries to hide from the fact that he is standing with the wealthiest Canadians and against the idea of them paying a little more so that young Canadians can buy a home, so that seniors can get their teeth fixed, so that young families can find a place in childcare. These are the investments we're making that they are standing against, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to deliver for Canadians who need them while he chooses to protect the interests of his wealthy friends.
Here, here.
You're the one with the wealthy friends, you hypocrite.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there's nothing cheap about the $220,000 that he spent on one trip for food alone.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition asked this question. I'm going to ask all members to please keep their voices down. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition from the top.
There's nothing cheap, Mr. Speaker, about the Prime Minister spending $220,000 for food alone on a 6-day jet-setting tour for himself. All the while, homelessness up 38%. Toronto has 256 homeless encampments, where 1 in 10 people in that city are now eating at food banks. They join 2 million Canadians. The good news is life was not like this before this Prime Minister, and it won't be like this after he's gone. Can we not have a carbon tax election now to choose a government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime?
Bravo, that was good. A moment of political bravura. Good way to end the day. And thank you for pushing these numbers up today. These are the highest numbers I've had.
It smells
At
like
a quite large
The
question period.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we see the extent of
Imagine that. He goes on these luxury trips on his private jet, creating a huge carbon footprint. No problem. My name's Justin Trudeau. Whining and dining like a king, and he thinks he's entitled to it. Boy, he needs his ass kicked out of that job as soon as possible.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives over this past session have stood in this House to stand against dental care for seniors. They've stood in this House to stand against expanding childcare investments in spaces. They've stood in this House to stand against the kinds of investments that are helping Canadians with diabetes, Canadians afford birth control. These are the choices that they are making. Now, they're filled with slogans and bumper stickers that don't solve problems but amplify anger, while we are focused on supporting Canadians. Canadians can make their choice. Tell the kind of country they want to live in.
Canadians have made their choice, and they will make their choice, and they're going to boot you out. If you still are around to experience that phenomena. And I sure hope you are. No, actually, I hope you're gone because we need to get rid of you sooner rather than later.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are looking for strong action from their government on making housing more affordable. The results of decades of Conservative government inaction are in. And it's no wonder. When the Leader of the Opposition was Housing Minister, he only got 6 units built. Since 2015, we've been committed to getting the government back into housing. Can the Prime Minister...
I truly cannot hear the Honourable Member ask this question.
It's not a
All
question.
members, please not take the floor while an Honourable Member is asking a question or while an Honourable Member is answering a question. Ask the member, please, to keep it together for a couple of more minutes. The honourable member from Vaughan Woodbridge from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are looking for strong action from their government on making housing more affordable. The results of decades of Conservative government inaction are in, and it's no wonder when the Leader of the Opposition was Housing Minister, he was a disaster, and he only got 6 units built. Since 2015, we've been committed to getting the government back into housing. Can the Prime Minister provide an update on the government is making life more affordable through
Just
housing
totally
investments?
shameless. Or is it shameful? I don't know. They're shameless,
Right
but
honourable
it's
Prime
shameful.
Minister.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Vaughan Woodbridge for his question and for his extraordinary hard work. For decades,
yeah,
governments
right.
have ignored the important role the federal government has to play in housing. That's why we brought the federal government back into the business of home building, working through an ambitious plan
None
to
of these
build 4
jackasses are doing
million
any hard
more
work.
homes. And as we just saw this week, Canada's housing starts are going up, with more homes being built right across the country. While the Conservatives would abandon the most vulnerable so their rich friends can pay less, we will not rest until we ensure fairness for every generation.
This is so laughable. Rich friend.
The honourable
The
member
guy
from Edmonton
who
Griesbach.
never had to work a day in his
Trade Wins
life.
to Success Training Society helps Indigenous people build up the trade skills we need to rebuild our own communities and our own future. Not only does the organization create a pathway to apprenticeship, but also guarantees Indigenous peoples opportunity for good paying jobs. Despite the Liberals' commitment to support them, no movement has been made. Is this yet another empty promise to Indigenous peoples? When will the Prime Minister establish a 5-year funding plan for Trade Wins to Success so they can continue to empower Indigenous labor?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as my colleague well knows, we are unequivocally committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities to advance self-determination, reconciliation, and economic opportunity. We have indeed tripled investments into Indigenous communities since 2015, with $32 billion in investments expected in 2024-25 alone. Budget 2024 includes over $1 billion to improve access to proper health care for Indigenous peoples, $338 million to support Indigenous entrepreneurship, and a monumental investment of $5 billion for the Indigenous Loan Support Program. There's lots more to do, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Saanich, Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The parliamentarians who serve on the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians have done an amazing job and deserve the thanks of all Canadians. In the face of foreign interference, we need to put Canada first and commit to working together. My question to the Prime Minister is this: is the Prime Minister open to working over the summer with all members of Parliament with top secret security clearance who are willing, in a confidential setting, to work in the hope of determining a shared course of action to reduce the threat of foreign interference?
This is the woman who didn't think there was a
The Right
problem.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank
you
the
read it
leader of the
during
Green
happy
Party
hour?
and other party leaders who've taken this issue seriously by getting their security clearances. We feel that the public inquiry is the best place for these discussions to continue, and we're pleased that the Commission has agreed to study this. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition would actually have to get his top secret security clearance in order to have a top secret discussion amongst party leaders.
And so we come to the end of question period. And I see that the Honourable Government House, the Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of
that was
Commons is
entertaining
rising
today.
on a point of order.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr.
No,
Speaker.
we don't want to hear you.
I have a motion,
Steve McKinnon, you can go
but
to
before
bloody
moving
hell.
it, I would like to thank you.
Thank you so much, folks, for watching today. That was probably the best question period I've seen in weeks. Great debate, if you will, or great exchanges between Polyev and Trudeau. Goes to show you Trudeau is just a automaton who's loaded with talking points, and that's all he is. He has got not a thought in his head. Can't wait to see him go. Anyway, thank you for your support today. It was tremendous. Great to hear see your comments. on the board. And please, we will continue this throughout the summer in some capacity. In addition to the regular broadcast I do. I think the live format with the interaction is important. So thanks for watching, folks. This was a great experience again. Keep fighting. We're going to find out who the names of these MPs, these treasonous MPs are. We're going to find out what exactly was going on. We're not going to let this issue die for the summer, during the summer recess. We're going to keep on fighting. Thanks for watching today. God bless you all.